Hi guys, it's me, Mr. Wilson, and we are moving on to chapter 6. And it is not a super long chapter, but you know how these things take. Anyways, thanks again to StacyPlays and Harper Publishing. Let's get to it, chapter 6. The dog was perched on a small rock in the middle of the magma, like a queen in her castle surrounded by a moat. The dog must have jumped out onto the rock when it was running down the cave at full speed. Now it didn't have the momentum to make the jump back. One clumsy move would mean certain death for the dog. The dog eyed them, now more frightened by what was happening around it than by the wolves. "Don't worry, little one. We'll find a way to rescue you," Stacy said. The confidence in her tone didn't match what she was really feeling. She took a deep breath and tried not to let the panic overwhelm her. The intense heat seared her lungs and made sweat pour down every inch of her body, stinging her eyes and dripping onto the hot rocky floor below her with an angry hiss. Everett stood slightly in front of Stacy, making sure she didn't get too close to the magma, while Wink had his teeth on Stacy's satchel, holding her back. Addison paced behind her, her tongue lolling, panting to release some of her body heat. Stacy could practically hear the gears in her mind turning, trying to figure out a way to rescue the dog. And Noah, poor river diving Noah, had never been more out of his element. All the wolves paced around nervously, waiting for Stacy's direction. Whatever they were going to do, they had better do it quickly. Stacy looked around, searching for anything that would help them rescue this little dog. Wink was the biggest daredevil of the group, and Stacy was sure he was gauging if he could make the jump over and back with the dog. But one wrong move, and they would lose both him and the dog. "No," Stacy said, assessing the distance. "The small rock will teeter, and both you and the dog will fall into the magma. No leaping. But maybe we can build a bridge of some kind." Everest was getting restless. He put his teeth on the back of Stacy's shirt and gave a small tug, pulling her backward. She kneeled down and took his face with her hands, whispering so that the little dog wouldn't hear. "I know it looks hopeless," she said, "but let's think. I'm not ready to give up." Everest growled a warning over his head. Stacy saw the dog beginning to turn around and tremble, making the rock wobble even more. "It's okay," Stacy cooed. "Try not to move too much." As she said that, even more magma bubbled up. The distance between them and the dog grew. Stacy raised her torch and studied the wall behind the dog. The magma moat was narrower behind the dog, and the wall had what looked like a ledge, but it was too small for Stacy's feet, and that was assuming Stacy could make the jump in the first place, which she wasn't confident about. "Is there anything we can use to build a bridge?" Stacy asked. She tried to remember some of the lessons she and Addison had skimmed in a Physics for Idiots book they had uncovered in the library's recycling bin. Stacy had originally been insulted by the title, but the book proved to be incredibly useful for teaching basic physics. The problem was none of their tools or equipment the book suggested were available deep down in this cave. She tore a strip of fabric off the bottom of her shirt and tied her hair up in a ponytail with it, trying to stop the streams of sweat from falling into her eyes. She raised the torch again and examined the walls and floors, searching for a loose piece of anything that might serve as a bridge. The wolves had picked up on Everest's uneasiness. Stacy could feel it too. But their loyalty to her overwhelmed whatever else they were thinking. They set out in search of materials. A few minutes later, Stacy heard a noise behind her and turned to see what Noah and Wink were both pushing, a thin sheet of shale toward her. The chunk of rock looked as if it had been sheared off the cave wall. Maybe in a rock slide? The shale fragment was too short to form a bridge that would stretch across the moat, but at least it was something. "Great job, guys," Stacy said. "I think we can work with this." Everest growled again at Noah and Wink for searching for tools, and at Stacy for even considering this dangerous rescue. "I know I can't get to the dog's rock island," Stacy assured him, "but using it as a plank I might be able to get close enough to grab it." Everest shook his head, but he knew there was no talking her out of trying. He paced nervously while Stacy searched through her satchel for leather gloves. They would help her hold on to the shale. One slip of a sweaty palm would send her careening, into magma. At least it would be a fast death, and I'll die doing what I loved, rescuing an animal, surrounded by my wolf family. It was as if Everest could read her thoughts. He stopped short and gave her a warning growl. "Don't do this," his facial expression said. "Just don't." "I have to try," Stacy whispered to Everest. "And if I slip, don't get any ideas about being a hero. The pack can't lose us both." She could almost hear Everest scoff, but she hoped her words got through. She didn't want him jumping in after her. Then she began speaking softly to the dog. It's okay. We're friends." Noah and Wink helped her tug the long piece of shale over the moat. It was hard to believe it could get any hotter, but the nearer they got to the magma, the higher the temperature rose. They carefully extended the slab halfway over the edge, just as Stacy had feared. It was short by a couple of feet. If they let go, it would fall and be lost. But if she could find something to place underneath the sheet of shale as its center, it would work like a seesaw to give her the height she needed to make the jump. It just needed a fulcrum. Stacy looked around the cave. There were several small boulders that might work, but all of them would likely make the seesaw too dangerous. If the boulder were to roll out from underneath the slab, Stacy would be done for. No, that wouldn't work. The sound of metal scraping against the cave floor echoed through the chamber, and Stacy turned around to see Addison. She was back from her supply scouting mission, dragging an rusty old pickaxe behind her. "Perfect, Daddy," lifting the heavy pickaxe. "Stand back, everyone. I've got an idea." Stacy struggled to lift the pickaxe to her shoulder. It was much heavier than she expected it would be. Using all her strength, she brought the pickaxe up over her head and let gravity do the rest, smashing the pickaxe down on the floor, taking out a sizable chunk of bedrock. "If I can chip away enough of an area, leaving a small strip of raised rock at the edge, we can make a shale seesaw." Stacy had never seen a wolf roll its eyes before, but that's exactly what Everest was doing. Meanwhile, Addison was nodding her head slowly as if she was still working out in her mind whether Stacy's plan was sound. Noah and Wink mostly just looked confused. Stacy understood where Everest was coming from. It was really risky. Shale was not the sturdiest of sedimentary rocks, essentially hardened mud made up of bits of clay, quartz, and calcite. It could easily break apart at any moment without warning, sending Stacy to a fiery grave. This was a particularly thick slab, though, and Stacy liked her chances. "Everest, please," Stacy pleaded. "This dog is running out of time and options. I believe this will work." Stacy carried on swinging the pickaxe, breaking up more of the bedrock with each hit. After a few minutes, she managed to clear a couple of feet. Stacy was exhausted. She sat down and took a sip of her canteen, while the wolves all worked to clear the tiny pieces of rubble from where she'd been mining. With all the small rocks out of the way, Everest helped Stacy drag the slab over the edge once more. Only now, instead of dangling it precariously over the edge, the shale lay in an incline at the groove Stacy had pickaxed. The other end, the one that hovered over the magma, rose like a seesaw. Stacy stood on the end of the slab and indicated for Everest and Addie to join her, which they did. "All right, here goes nothing," Stacy whispered. With Everest and Addison standing on the end, Stacy began to slowly walk up the plank on her hands and knees, just as she had hoped. The shale head steadily with the weight of the wolves on the other side. Stacy reached the top and peered over the edge, a decision she immediately regretted. She centered the weight on the slab and took a deep breath. "Okay, Addison," she said, "listen closely. I want you to step your back legs off the slab." Stacy braced herself for what she knew was coming. Addison let out a series of short, piercing barks that echoed loudly off the cave walls, a clear objection to Stacy's plan. She didn't even want to know what Everest's expression was, and she didn't dare risk moving to turn her head around to see. Suddenly, Stacy lurched forward on the slab, sliding a couple inches towards the edge. Addison, surprisingly, had done what Stacy asked her to do, and stepped one leg off the slab, but now Stacy was closer to the magma than ever before. The dog let out a painful yelp. Stacy could now see that it had a small burn on one of its front paws. "Okay, good, Addie," she said. "Now, other back leg, slowly." Addison stepped off the slab with her other hind leg, making sure to keep both her front paws firmly planted on the slab with Everest. Stacy was lowered a few more inches, and the dog was just barely out of reach now. The poor thing cowered even more, whimpering in fear and in pain. Stacy reached around behind her back and grabbed a small rope out of her satchel. She tied it to her waist and threw the other end to Noah and Wink. Hold on to the rope. I might need your help to balance on my way back. They stood, one behind the other, grasping the rope in their teeth. Stacy could see that they didn't understand how this would help. Neither did she, really, but she wanted to give them a job to do. It seemed a sensible thing at the moment. She almost laughed at herself. If I was sensible, I'd still be asleep in the cave. At least with the rope they'll have my bones to bury if I fall in. Or does magma melt bones? She shook the thought off and began to inch her way over the edge of the shale. I love you guys, she said over her shoulder. She heard Wink whimper behind her. Stacy was as far as she could go at the end of the slab. She extended her arm towards the little dog, who was now just inches away from her grasp. Here, little one, she said. Be a good dog and come to me. Stacy expected the little dog to whimper or even growl, but instead she heard a sound that sent shivers down her spine and made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up in fear. Oh no, Stacy groaned. The shale had begun to crack. Nervous. End of chapter 6. Oh my gosh. So I want you to leave a comment down below, either on this YouTube page or on our Facebook page, and let me know what you think is going to happen. Is she going to survive? Is the dog going to survive? What's going to happen? Anyways, guys, I hope you have a fabulous day. Make sure you watch my day 7. When is this going up? Day 8 e-learning video, and make sure you do all of those activities. And yeah, I will see you guys soon. Love you. Bye.